Hey guys, so super embarrassing here. I actually messed up with Audacity. I meant to be recording some live gameplay, and I accidentally wound up recording over those tracks with another one. So I get to do post commentary replay without any background sound from in game. So that's why this one's going to be a little bit different. But basically, today we are traveling our way through Anne Orlando to try and get to Ornstein and Smo, which I have coming up as a something a little bit special. Not really, but it's just too much of a pain for me to try and do that live, basically. So pretty much we're just going to be wandering through. Don't remember anything being too difficult today. So just taking on this gargoyle, and I was like, I killed one with the crossbow. How difficult could it be? But these guys, they breathe lightning instead of fire, so that's something different that you'll notice. And then you'll see later, he actually becomes a pain to hit as he moves. And this is, I don't know if I ever explained this, but the crossbow in this game, the disadvantage that it has over the normal bow is that you cannot lock, or you can only lock on with it. You cannot free aim it. So wherever that white circle is the only place that I can attack. Had I been using a bow, could get some more accurate attacks, but as it is, basically stand no chance of actually hitting this guy like 9 times out of 10. So a little bit frustrating during all that, but still managed to take him down somehow, just kind of waiting for him to land here, and then there we go. So that should take care of that. There is a piece of Demon Titanite that's going to be over to our left that we're actually not going to go and get because I don't plan on using any of the boss weapons. And that was me looking over there to be like, it's over there. See? I'm not lying, maybe. So this section is actually a little bit of a pain if you've got heavier armor, or if you walk all the way up to the ledge, you want to stop, give yourself a little bit of clearance, and because we have the ninja ring, we get a longer roll, so it's a little bit safer. And then I wasn't sure how to deal with these guys, but you see I broke a lock-on because this game's lock-on is so super good. I've actually had a lot of troubles with that this run, where you'll see it a lot coming up. But if enemies move out of your lock-on range, then it breaks the lock-on, and if you're currently moving away from it, then it changes the direction that you're firing. So it becomes a little bit of a hassle, and I'm not actually sure, because we did pick up the sniper crossbow, and that has a bit longer of a range, but I don't think that the range applies to the lock-on distance. So I don't really know. It'll be interesting to see. I'm sure once I upgrade the sniper crossbow, we'll find out, but not this time around. And this upcoming section is actually a lot easier if you have a ranged weapon, bow especially, and the reason for that is, like I was saying before, you can use it just to shoot over at these guys instead of getting within lock-on distance. Their aggro distance is a little bit less than the lock-on distance, so you see here I'm trying to like lock on and like have to get closer, and then I decide against these guys that I'm fine with trading hits with the knives as long as they'll let me, but actually hitting them with a crossbow does draw their aggro even closer, gets them out of that knife throwing mode. And one of the things, I think we picked up some throwing knives earlier from one of these guys, and I know that I touch on it at some point here, is if we do plan on taking on crossbreed Priscilla, one of the harder things about that fight is going to be breaking her invisibility. The fight begins with her turning invisible, and she will not turn visible again until either you stagger her through damage, or you can also get her to become visible. I don't know if it's 100% guaranteed, but every time that I've used a pyromancy fireball on her, she has decided to turn visible again. But one of the tricks you can do is, you see that throwing knife sticking out of my shoulder there. Actually, you can throw one of those at where her feet is. And I was getting worried here because I was pretty close to death. But you can actually throw one right where, and again, worried, close to death. You can throw one where you see her footprints in the snow, and it actually sticks inside of her body, so you can use it to track where she is to try and get in some hits. And that would be more helpful if I was using a melee weapon instead of a ranged, because like I was saying before, the crossbow can't aim, so I'm going to have to get really, really good at no-scoping before I take her on. I'm pretty sure that Ornstein and Smo were going to be one challenge from this run, and then the other challenge was definitely going to be Priscilla. But outside of that, I'm not imagining that there's too much that's going to be that difficult. So, get this switch down, which is going to trigger the other gargoyle. And kind of an interesting fact, if you have the Ring of Fog equipped, which is a good idea for this area, if you can get it available. The gargoyle actually spawns over by the larger stairs leading up to the path to the Silver Knights. So you can actually fight him at a different location than on this little platform. But here is nice because most of his attacks are just kind of flat, they're level with the ground. So actually, if you take the low ground against him, unlike every Star Wars advice you'd ever hear, you have an advantage. And I cut off his tail, and it didn't immediately drop the axe, or halberd, but we did pick it up after he died. I think that these ones have a much higher drop rate than the bosses. I've seen it's pretty common for me to get all 3 of the gargoyle items from killing that second one. So I don't know if maybe it's just his item drop rate is changed from the others, but whatever the case, we get to move on with the most dickish part of the game to many, many people. We have a faster ring, but basically all we're doing is running by all these guys. You want to do your little ninja flips. At these guys, you can just ignore the lot of them, especially the giants will be right behind you. It's okay to tank one hit, and I forget if one of them pegs us on the way down. They try to, but it's really imperative that you keep moving throughout this section up until you get up this next staircase. Like, even if one of those guys hits you, it doesn't matter. Your Estus, you're not conserving them. You're either going to die in one hit, or you're going to make it. So, again, I'm not even going to bother healing, because there's no point. So, pretty much you want to run up here, roll past an arrow, and get the guy on the right to draw his sword. If he draws his sword, you're like halfway there. So, roll past the arrow, he draws his sword. Now, all we need is a single parry, and there it is. So taking him down, the archer on the left now actually can't hit us through a wall, which I believe is repositioned. I think that was one of the unpatched things from the game, was that the second archer was at the same kind of elevation and spacing, the same like X and Z axis, if you will, as the archer that we killed there. So it actually made it really hard because those Dragon Slayer arrows were coming from 2 directions, and if they wind up hitting you, it's not that they do a lot of damage, but they can knock you back a few feet. So you're getting shot in the back with arrows that stagger you, and you're getting shot in the front with arrows that can knock you back, all on this teeny tiny little cliff. So it's a little bit of a nightmare. It's definitely a harder section, and I believe they patched it to be easier. I'm using some humanity here to kindle a bonfire, meaning that there's a good chance that it'll get invaded. This is definitely a hot spot for a lot of invasions to happen, so it wouldn't be really surprising to see. So want to kindle right away. But yeah, I think that if you have the Ring of Fog, they don't shoot arrows at you as soon as they do once you start climbing up, which some people say helps a little bit. You can also get some poison arrows and just kind of wait it out. You can find a good sniping spot, just take out both of them, be patient, be smart. And you're going to see me fail on this guy, because these Silver Knights, pretty much you should be able to learn how to parry them here. Learning how to parry these guys teaches you how to parry the Black Knights, and teaches you how to parry the last boss. They all have the same fighting style, so it's actually really helpful. And this is also a pretty good place to grind out souls. I'm sure that you saw the normal ones drop 1,000. Any ones with the Dragon Slayer bow drops 1,300, I believe. So you're getting a decent amount per enemy. And I'm actually going to be using all of these in order to buy better bolts. There is a blacksmith here, and we're actually, it doesn't matter, sorry, I'm going to interrupt myself yet again, as I like to do. We're going to come down here. There's the full Havel set, along with an Occult Club. And the Occult Club can actually be really useful if you're playing a character that doesn't have any divine weapon, or no plan to get one. Because you can downgrade it once, and then you immediately have a Divine +5 weapon. So it's pretty nice from that perspective. Relatively easy to get, and you will eventually need it. So just a little kind of recommendation for that. But this chest is, of course, the Mimic. It's always the one that's alone. No need to worry about attacking the chest to make sure, anything like that. And then switching to the bow, just so that way I can finish him off from range, which probably could have stuck with this Vi. The crossbow does kind of less damage, and it's actually pretty much just as risky. The worst thing is that the Mimic can do is either when you open the chest without realizing it's a Mimic, they'll pretty much instantly kill you. And they have an attack that's very similar to that. That's just kind of a grabbing attack, so you want to avoid that as well if possible. And then this place is full of mimics, so we'll get to see a little bit more fighting them. And, oh yeah, this is where I was talking about the homeward bone trick. If you're unaware, if you're in human form and if you're in a spot where it's possible to get invaded a lot, if you equip a homeward bone into any of your inventory slots, you can pretty much cycle through whenever you're doing any other action. And I think this is the guy that I screw up on a lot. Yeah, like I don't have the windows down quite right for it, and so he nearly kills me. From this point on, I'm like, screw it, I'll just backstab the guys with the spears. Don't even care. But you can cycle through your inventory when you're parrying, backstabbing, I think even drinking an Estus, and just check and see if you can use your homeward bone. If you can use your homeward bone, you are not being invaded. So it's just a good way of telling if you're currently being invaded. And I think there was actually a point where I left to go do something. I don't remember what it was. It was like use the bathroom or grab a drink of water, something like that. And I came back and I checked my bone and I was like, somebody might be coming. But the netcode in the PC release is actually worse than the console, I believe. So it's a much lower chance of being invaded. So I was like, yeah, whatever, it might just be nothing. And I missed that the guy actually did invade me. He was in my world. He was just looking around for me. So I didn't cross his path for another like 5 minutes. And finally he came up on me while I was taking on some of the giant guards downstairs and started fighting. And I was like, whoa, didn't expect this guy. Not one bit. So it was an interesting little fight. And I was really hoping that that mimic did not get a free 2-for-1. And these guys have gold and silver coins, and they are worthless as far as items go, but you can sell them to Framped for souls. I think the silver ones are 5,000 and the gold is 10,000. And there I meant to heal, instead homeward boned. Saw that it was inactive, and I was like, was it really? Am I being invaded right now? How much would that suck? So we're just opening the level shortcuts here, taking the long path. Basically, if if you can imagine doing what I'm doing backwards, that's pretty much one of the better farming routes in the game, especially at this point. Ornstein and Smo tend to be the point where I decide that my character needs leveling up. I generally feel a little bit unprepared when coming to fight against them, so it's good to have a little bit extra. And there's a guy right beyond here, and a lot of times he does one of the few unblockable attacks in the game, and I think we get to see one later, so I'll point it out when it happens. But yeah, it's not too bad. And then up this staircase is an arena that I like to use. If you can clear out this area, it's nice and wide open for PvP. So if you are getting invaded, coming up here is nice. You only have to take out, I think, 4 Silver Knights to get back up here, so to get your souls back isn't that much of a trek. If you're inexperienced against fighting them, of course, it'll still be a pain. And if you had been following the Siegmeyer of Katarina quest, which I have all the time, he would actually be right back there. So, won't see him this time around. Yeah, that's the unblockable attack. If they put their sword under the shield. If they go, I think it's, yeah, the top left, they do a single attack. Top right, they do 3 attacks, followed one after another. And after the shield bash, they do a thrust. So, I think that those are their only 4 moves. There might be something else I'm not thinking of, but they're really not that bad. But once you clear this room out, then you can talk to Siegmeyer for a Tiny Beings ring, which is a really terrible ring. Don't use it. Don't get it. No one cares about it. But you also progress his quest line so that he will meet you wherever it's next that he meets you. I think he meets you back in Firelink and then again in the swamp. I could be mistaken on that, though. I tend not to follow the NPC quests unless I really need something from them, and I rarely need something from Siegmeyer. So, the chest is right here. I'm not gonna pick it up, so might as well. And then just continuing on in our run. And I don't think we have a lot of upgrade options. Oh, actually, the giant blacksmith is going to let us upgrade our current Zweihander. Oh, here I'm showing off. That's how far back the arrows can knock you. So that's what it looks like when you get hit by one. And if you're on that teeny tiny ledge, it's super bad news. And I just failed right there. It's painful to watch. Like, I must have been distracted or something. But, oh, that's right. I was showing off the fun parries. You can actually, I was really in a demonstrative mood today. It's too bad I lost the audio. But So when you parry, you don't need to have your shield animation come through. You can actually cancel out of your shield animation by performing the attack input, and the result from it is your enemy attacks, and it basically looks like you just decide that you're not going to take it and just stab them. It's fantastic. I absolutely adore it, but it's more difficult to pull off than a normal parry, and part of that is because if you mess up your timing, it leaves you wide open. So there's a level shortcut, the main one for getting to the boss, which I will be using quite a bit. But yeah, those special parries, they just look cool. It leaves you wide open if you miss your parry. You put in the attack, and then all of a sudden you're doing this attack animation into an enemy who's probably just hit you. So it's a little bit weaker strategy, but it's fun to do. I recommend trying it out at least a few times just to get a feel for it. And I really think that the enemies in this area telegraph their moves the best, but that might just be me. Now we get to come in here, and this is actually where all of the invaders are going to spawn if you do get invaded. It's right in front of the boss gate, which is kind of a dick move in retrospect, but that's how it goes. There's a dragon slayer bow outside that broken window, and I'm just going to come down here to take on this silver knight. I just like to take him out before I forget, because I do like to take on those guards downstairs. They are worth 3,000 souls each, meaning that it's well worth your time. And they also have a pretty small chance to drop a Titanite chunk, which would let you upgrade your lightning weapon. One of the disadvantages, and I've mentioned this before, about using the banded iron shield, is that these knights, if they hit your shield while you're blocking, they will bounce off, and that resets their animation. So you saw there, he did a little 3-stage sword attack, and when he did that, it's a really good chance to counter, especially if you're new, because you know exactly what's coming next. So you should be able to get the timing on that, but this shield does actually throw that off quite a bit. So you just have to be able to read from their opening attack instead of the middle of their combo, but still not too bad. So here, we meet the giant, get our lightning Zweihander. We can upgrade it to +1, and you can see it's dealing a ton more damage. It went up to, I believe, 520 damage. This guy also lets you upgrade your weapons with boss souls, and we get our +1. So yeah, 540 between physical and lightning, which is a lot of damage. And because we have the just bare minimum requirements for one-handing it, the scaling really didn't make that much of a difference. Two-handing it obviously did a lot more damage, but this is going to increase our damage greatly by basically converting those unused stats over to lightning. And I'm just buying these to upgrade the sniper crossbow at some point, not necessarily now. I'll need another large one at some point, again, not necessarily now. And I'll also need some for the Avalon. And here's the lightning bolts. So they deal 78 lightning damage, otherwise they're the same as the wooden bolts. So you're adding on, it's doing the same as the wooden bolt, but you're adding on like another 2 shots in lightning damage. And this sounds pretty good. I mean, against a lot of enemies, it's definitely helpful. It's a huge damage increase. The only downside of it is, first, that they cost 700 souls each. And then the second downside is that, from what I've heard about the mechanics of this game, enemies have resistances to each element, along with a physical resistance. So if you pump all of your damage into physical, then they only get 1 resistance roll against it. Whereas if you put all of your damage in, or split your damage between physical and lightning, then they get to apply each resistance to each element. So this means that while we're adding whatever it was, like 78 lightning damage, we're also adding in an elemental defense to that. So we're not getting 100% of it. And you'll see it come up later where they aren't as stellar as I thought they would be, but I'm sure that later in the game we'll also see where they're pretty good. Because yeah, with our fire crossbow, that means that we've got 3 elemental damage types against 3 different resistances, so maybe not the best. And those wings are strictly ornamental. Anytime where you shoot one of them next to a ledge, they actually fall straight off. And that chunk is actually going to let us upgrade it into a Lightning Zweihander +2, which is going to be nicer. It'll probably get us, I forget exactly where it is. Let's just watch and find out. So yeah, it gets us up to, oh, okay, I was mistaken before. I was reading the wrong one. So now we're at that 270 mark. So, good times, had by all. So now there's just a little bit of time left, so I was like, yeah, what the hell? I'll take on the 2 guards downstairs, and then I think just head on back. And pretty much I was dedicated to doing a couple runs after this of getting souls, getting levels. You can see that we've got the summon sign for Solaire down there, even though we haven't been following his quest line. He's actually not in the city for me. But yep, if we needed him, he's there. So yeah, I pretty much wanted to open up all the shortcuts and then run through here. I think I ran through about 5 times just to get enough souls, to get enough bolts, and I actually don't think that I used any for levels. I think it was all on lightning bolts and things like that. Just so that way I wouldn't feel so bad about using them on the boss. I like to have a supply of about 100. I think 150 was what I settled on, just so that way I wouldn't run out if I had to go back multiple times, wouldn't have to worry about, switching over mid-fight, and hopefully increasing my DPS, but we'll see how that goes when I actually get there. For now, we can take on these guys. They are kind of dicks. That shield of theirs will block any damage 100%, and also, not too much damage taken there. They have a Wrath of the Gods Miracle, just a kind of AoE blast, and they can heal themselves. So that's the Wrath of the Gods animation that he started up, so I was able to finish him off. If they begin to kneel, then they're going to heal themselves. They only do this when they get beneath probably about 25%, so it's not super common, but it is really annoying. As far as I can tell, there is no limit to how many times they can do this, so you can get them down to 20% health like 5 times and still have to kill them. But after the first time you see it, you should be trying to get behind them and get into a good position once they start the animation for it. They also have really good pivoting, so it can be a little bit tricky to get that far behind them. And I was going for a kill there, totally whiffed, and then he goes and T-bows to his death. So, able to get his souls, no items. I'm staring longingly at that fog gate, thinking, maybe I could take him on right now. Spoilers, I can't. But just running back, finishing up the Lasso lightning bolts. Like I said, I'm going to do a lot of off-camera grinding immediately after this to make sure that I have enough bolts to be able to take them on. After each failed attempt, I just decide to use the souls that I spend getting back to buy more heavy bolts. So, that takes care of this one. Next time we're going to be taking on the Big Bag, Ornstein, and Smo. So I will, I guess, see you guys there. Oh, upgrade the crossbow. Upgrade it. Yeah! Alright, see you guys.